Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to have so many people here, and we're going to have a look at building business skills to boost employability. So let's start off by looking to see what business skills actually are. Well, they're also known as the hard skills because they are a bit different than what we call soft skills, the interpersonal skills. The business skills are the ones that are needed in specific situations or specific jobs, and they get business done in a different way than the soft skills do. We need them to achieve the outcomes we're trying to get in business. They can be used in a variety of jobs, although some of these are more suited for some jobs than for others. And why do our students need them? Well, employers today expect students to arrive at the workplace ready to work. This means that they don't need to train them as much as they would if they arrive with no idea of the workplace. And it also helps students to prepare for opportunities that are abroad. I've been teaching business English for many years in companies and at universities, and this is a major part, is the international opportunities that students have today. What are the companies saying about this? Well, if we look around, English is the most used language that we find on websites and internet users. I realize other languages are also extremely important in certain parts of the world, but English is still the language that people are using to communicate. And many companies, even here in Austria where I live, have English as their company language, also NGOs. So you never know what you're going to need. Students who go off to meetings at another company suddenly find that they have to speak English. An increasing amount of business is carried out in English. And those skills are simply expected by HR directors. They're just supposed to be there. So what about us? Well, as you can see this lovely photo of the police on horseback, you might have trained at the police academy, but you didn't learn to ride a horse. So many of us haven't actually used the skills in the jobs that we've had. I worked in business, but I never ran meetings until I began working in teacher associations where I had to learn to do this. Unless you're the head of a department, you do your job, but you don't do things like give presentations to clients or run meetings. So we need to understand how these skills work in order to teach them. And very often we need support in preparing our students. The issues in the classroom are also something we have to look into. We have to really consider the fact that not only do we have a mixed ability as far as levels go, I have never seen a class where everyone is exactly on the same level, but in business English we also have different levels of business knowledge, which makes it even more interesting. So we might have had people who are pre-work and never worked anywhere in their lives, could have had those who were pre-work but spent every summer doing work placement, or they were apprentices. Then we have those who are in work. We have those who come back to university or come back to a course after working. So there are many different levels. Then we add on to it the fact that students are going to have many different jobs. And this is the next problem. We can't just say, okay, we're only going to prepare this group of students or this group of students. We don't know what they're going to be doing. And in order to keep them interested, the material needs to be up to date, relevant, and it has to engage them. So we're going to have a look at the way we have looked at building business skills. What we've looked at here is to make it explicit training. In other words, don't say, well, we know you need presentations, but there's no time to practice. Well, that doesn't work. We have to practice it. We have to go through it. It has to be part of what we do. We have to focus on a wide variety of these skills, but they also have to relate to what our students have experienced. We can't start at Z if they're only at A in the alphabet. So there has to be a lot of preparation and moving slowly through material in order to help them. And this is done through up-to-date videos, audio, making things authentic, and then practicing the skills. It is language, yes, but we must bring the skills into it. And then the final tasks, where they are speaking more freely, that is designed to implement what they've learned throughout a lesson in order really to round it off. So these are the ones we're going to have a look at. Meetings. This is something we do need to learn to do. Negotiations and difficult negotiations. This was something I was more familiar with since I came from an advertising agency where I actually negotiated with clients or with salespeople, but still learning the techniques of this is again different than having done it in one specific situation. We do need to learn how to do it in order to teach it to them and to make it clear. We need to show them what exactly they can do. Sales and selling strategies. Another thing that students need to learn to do. This is not something that you just walk in and begin to sell. There are certain strategies that we can teach them. Learning how to give presentations. This is major. Teachers are usually good at this because we stand up in front of the classroom, but there are still techniques to learn. And then time management is something that everyone needs to learn. And I think many of us in this field have learned it ourselves, but we can still give ideas of how exactly to do this. So let's have a look at some specifics. Okay, this is B1 level, so we are looking at vocabulary before we even begin. And looking at this kind of language to update someone or to give an update, to action something, an action plan. And then the students have to talk about the kinds of updates that they get and receive in a typical week, and if they have any action items that they have to take care of. This is an important thing to look at. Otherwise, meetings don't move forward. When meetings are too general without updates and action points, things can get off track. And the one thing that people don't have time for are long meetings. So we're going to have a quick listen to someone talking about a new procedure for meetings. You're going to listen, and what I'd like you to do, if you can, in the chat box, to answer either 5, 6, or 7, one of those, and just very briefly. And the interesting thing is, this actually was discussed in a class that I give for project managers. They had to brainstorm how to make their meetings go more quickly and take up less of their day. And this was one of the suggestions they had. So we're going to have a listen to this audio.
Unit 3, Recording 4. Part 1.
Welcome to our first stand-up meeting. No sitting down. The idea is that these meetings will be over very fast, not more than 15 minutes, and the aim is to bring us all up to date about what is going on in the team. This is very important. It is for all of us, not just for management. From today, these take place every morning at 9 a.m. This is a new type of meeting for most of us, so I will just explain what we plan to do. It's very simple. I will start by throwing this ball to a person. The person with the ball then gives the rest of us 3 pieces of information. 1, what they did yesterday. 2, what they plan for today. 3, any problems or impediments that they see. That's it. No discussion. They then throw the ball to another person who answers the same 3 questions. We go on until everyone has spoken. After the meeting, I will then follow up and speak to individuals about any action items. Any questions? No? Good. Okay, let's start with Jack. Catch!
Okay. So, what is different about this kind of meeting? What are they doing? Yeah, they're standing, not sitting, which of course is going to make it go faster. And the ball is to... couldn't hear the audio. Okay. Basically, she said it's a stand-up meeting and the ball is thrown around two people who have to answer specific or have to give specific information. Does anyone remember what the specific information was? Three pieces of info, right? What they did yesterday, yes. What's planned for today? And the last thing was problems, exactly. And then the leader of the meeting will follow up with them and set the action points. This would mean that this meeting will go much faster than a very long meeting with agenda that could take the whole morning. Do you think this kind of thing could work? Just write yes or no quickly, and then we're going to go on. Yeah, something to try. Okay, so going on, after they've gone through the entire lesson here, they will get language and so on to work on. They then are put into small groups for the task. And there are scenarios, 3 of them, which they have to work on using this information, giving an update on something that happened, what they plan to do, and any problems on one of these issues. They then ask each other questions about this. It goes quickly. They have to then note them down. This is also something that is quite different. Normally agendas, minutes are based on the agenda. The secretary writes right into the agenda what happens, and those are the minutes. Here you have to remember what people said. And then you have to talk about what went well and what didn't go well. So something for students to try out after they have listened to it and discussed it. Okay, so we're going on. Now looking at B1 Plus, and we're talking about negotiating, which is something that we all do every day. It's simply a discussion between 2 people or more people to reach an agreement. Now, think about it. We actually do this when we talk about who's going to make dinner, who's going to wash the dishes, and so on. But of course, in a business situation, the stakes are higher. And looking at the qualities is very interesting. This actually reminds me of a situation I was in. I was working with a young marketing manager who was from Germany. So he was living in Austria, not a huge difference of culture, but it was still not his home country. And he tended to dress in suits. He was marketing, met with clients, and he had an important negotiation coming up with the head of research and development. And he asked me if we could work on it. Could we work on language? And I said, well, sure. But do you have any idea what this person is like? And he said, no. So we first made a profile. Now, the marketing manager, any idea which of these he might have been good at? If you can see in the speech bubble, people are in trouble writing, or is it possible to write? Just wait for one answer, perhaps. Okay, yeah, influencing others. Structured and analytical was actually more the R&D person, the person in research and development. The marketing manager was a bit more on the creative side. But yes, they can, of course, be structured and analytical. So he then looked at where he was and thought about where his partner was, and it helped him. Yes, he was flexible. It helped him to prepare for the negotiation in a very different way. It wasn't just language. And apparently it went very well. They finished the negotiation. They both felt that they had gotten what they needed, and he felt he could go on with this in different situations. Okay. And then from there, there is actual information on the steps of negotiating. So the 4 steps. So for example, which one would be A? If you have to look at these 12 sentences, what would the welcome be? You can just write the number in the box from 1 to 12. Yes, exactly 4. Good to see you again. Are you well? What about the end? Close positively. Yes, 7, right. So they work on that. They get some language, they organize it, and depending on the type of learner, this is something that I find helps me to learn when I have a group of phrases that belong to one particular area. So we start with the opening, the proposals, the bargaining and discussion, and then the summary and closing. I don't know how this works with the other people's answers. I'm trying to read them out loud. And then they go back and they look at more language here, and they have to match the proposals 1 to 6 with the response A to F, our standard way of teaching, but building up language for the students. And from here, we go on to difficult negotiation. So it's not always easy to negotiate. It can depend on who we're negotiating with, what we're negotiating about, the process, the way it's done, and the strategy. And here the students have to discuss these different dimensions for negotiating. And there are areas that they then decide, and there are some questions here. So do you think these are all important? Are all 4 necessary? You can just say yes or no. Do we need to know all of this? Yes, definitely. Okay. Why do we see people as difficult? Anyone have any idea? They have their own agenda. Each of us is different. Yeah, different people. Yeah, absolutely. And there are different things they need. They could be under different types of pressure, different expectations, 100%, absolutely. Yes. And why would people see us as difficult? What do we need to know? Not easy listeners, okay. Same reasons, yes. It could be culture. It could simply be a mismatch in that case, that we do things in one way, another culture does it in another way, and we misinterpret that. We don't know. So this is something to look at carefully, to discuss with students, because they need to understand it. It's one of the definite business skills that they need to know about. And we go on from there to a task. This task has got 3 scenarios. So you're put in groups of 3 students, and A and B work together, then A and C work together, and then B and C work together with an observer. They have to look at, the observer looks at how the discussion is managed. We're not looking here at, did he use the present perfect correctly? That is, of course, something the teacher can look at, but we want the observer to actually look at the business communication that's going on, to become aware of how well we are managing to do what we're trying to get the message across, and the phrases. And then the 3 discussions can be done, are role played, and they discuss what went well, and they switch roles. So I'm going to show you these are 2 of the scenarios. So in the first one, you've worked every weekend, you need a couple days off, and another person feels that the meetings are a complete waste of time, and they're not being, you need to be diplomatic not to say that. So there are different scenarios that you practice. These are the 2 that student A would have. Student B has got scenario 1 along with student A, but scenario 3, which they would then do with student C, so that there's a mixture of things. They're not doing the same thing over and over again, but they are also observing each other, which I find to be extremely helpful in the classroom. Okay, I'll be answering questions at the end, so you can make notes for yourselves if you want. Okay, then going on to sales and selling. What do you think about these? Is it important for all? Do you think you would be good at it? And the top 3 qualities. Any ideas here? Okay, which level price? Do you mean as far as the book goes? This is now B2. So was the negotiate. Yes, it's important for all. Yes. Yeah. Learned and practiced. Yeah. We discussed rapport in the soft skills webinar, and I think this is the major thing. As I said, I was a buyer. This was many years ago, about 40 in New York, and I'm still in touch with some of my salespeople because the rapport was there. They're still friends. But that is something that you do have to learn to do. Authentic, definitely. So that's a quality that somebody would have to have. Now, interestingly enough, yesterday in a lesson with an HR person, I asked why business skills were important. And she said, well, we actually like to have new people in the company because they have a new perspective. They see things differently. And if they can express themselves with these skills, like selling an idea or presenting or negotiating, they can get their message across. And it could be getting it across to anyone, to a member of the team, to their boss, to a member of the board, because they are new. They're seeing things with fresh eyes. And that was a very interesting point to make, why everyone in business needs these skills. Okay, from school level, that question came up. This is meant, it could be done, I suppose, in specialist high schools, but it's meant at least starting with university level. But it's the level of English as well, and they need to understand what this means. And business English is not taught at lower levels because they're not really confronted with it. Okay. Okay, so we're going to listen to another audio so you can hear how a conversation goes on. This is about a small company that provides IT software services to what we call SMEs, small and medium-sized companies. And Luigi is at a local networking event, meets a potential new client who runs a tour business. And these are the 4 questions. I think when I play it, I don't know if you see the questions. How does he open the conversation? What knowledge does he show? What does he explain as being the specialism of his own company, and what does he say the solutions offer? So I'm going to go to the audio.
Unit 6, Recording 5.
Hello, having fun?
There are a lot of people, but it's interesting, yes.
Luigi Moretti from Romtech.
Caroline Macklin Tours.
Macklin Tours? I know the name. You've been in business for over a year now, haven't you?
Very good, I'm impressed. Yes, we set up just 18 months ago.
I've heard great things about you. You have a good reputation.
Thank you. But what do you do exactly?
We specialize in software solutions for small and medium-sized companies. Our expertise is in providing the correct support for each client. Which systems are you using at the moment?
Oh, for now, we just use the standard spreadsheet and database software we could download for free. But they're not great, really.
I can imagine. Our solutions enable you to manage and communicate with clients more effectively. So basically, what we offer is better relationships and more sales, which I think everyone wants. Would you like me to talk through what we have?
Yes, thank you. Maybe this is something we need to look at now that we're growing.
Sure. Shall we grab a coffee first?
Good idea. I think there is somewhere over there where we can go and get...
Okay, so does anyone remember how Luigi started the conversation? Yes, having fun. And did he know about her? Yes, he knew what kind of company it was, right. And what did he say the specialism was? Yeah. Yeah, software for small and medium-sized companies. And What did he say the solutions would offer her? Yes, more sales and better relationships. So he's already got her interested. It wasn't a hard sell at the very beginning. It was a soft sell. And he then goes on, you can see the questions, he goes on with more specific things. He then talks about finance tracking. I'm not going to play the second one, but she finds that really useful. Tracking their finances. If you're a small company and you're starting to grow, there's a lot of things you probably haven't quite done yet. He talks about the software being fully customizable, so he can change it for what she's doing. And this is very interesting for her. She's also worried about it being complex, and he tells her that they would give them intensive training. And when he comes to the cost, what do you think he says? Right, negotiable. He does not come out and give a price. He says it depends. Yeah, affordable. He doesn't actually say that either. He says he can't answer yet as he doesn't know exactly what she needs. Yeah, we'll try. We'll have a look at it. And so you have to look at the advantages and disadvantages of this. But we don't know. And actually, a friend of mine's husband did this exact job. They developed software for companies, and he went and sold it to people. It was for accounting firms, because he was an accountant. And they would go in and get them interested and then show them what it did. And once they see that they need it, that it's going to increase sales, you are in a much better position, obviously, to name a price than if you name the price from the beginning. So the idea is to build this up slowly. Okay. And then you would go on. Okay, these were, you then look at language specifically, matching the questions with the sales skills. You need to check the client needs. You need to request feedback. Explore possible blockers to a sale. What does that mean? So something that they might say no because of. Anyone know which answer that one is? Can anyone just write the number in, the possible blocker? Yeah, number 4. Is budget a major consideration? Yeah. So trying to find out where the problems are. It could be time. It could be personnel. It could be training. It could be equipment. We don't know. There can be many things. So teaching them the actual questions that go along with the skills that they need. Okay. And then the task lets them practice all of this, setting up the customer profile, working on this, using a template. Well, that's for the profile, but then working with them and taking turns to be the salesperson and the customer, practicing the actual sales techniques, which is what the students need. And then they leave the classroom. They've done it. They've tried it out. They are in much better shape if they have to actually do this in the workplace. Okay. So we're going to go on. Giving presentations is the next thing. I'm just going to show you some of these things. Developing a convincing argument. So these are strategies for that. Highlighting the positives. So they look through this and they get, for example, highlighting the positives, one clear benefit is that you will meet new people. And then you go back and look at the actual sentences as well to look for a positive. Any ideas which one that might be? Which the positive is? There are several there that are very positive. If anyone wants to just type in the number from 1 to 7. Screen is very small. Yeah, it's hard to see. It's 5. This can undoubtedly enable you to have a successful career. So this is a matching, again, of skills plus language. And then they get to practice giving a presentation on applying for an internship. And then at the end, they have to prepare for a presentation that argues for or against a statement, giving the presentation and then having the audience ask questions. So how to use presentation skills. Okay, I'm going to go on to time management as we have a video here. And just starting off, how do you keep track of what you need to do? Do you use paper? Do you have it in your phone? Any comments here? Emails. Oh, I like that. Okay. Both, yeah. I have to start. I actually left my calendar last week in the car that took me to my hotel when I was in Sarajevo. Luckily, I got it back, and the person I was with, who puts everything in her phone, said, just have them photograph the next couple of weeks for you and send you the photograph of your calendar so you know what you're doing, which helped, but it did arrive, so I'm very happy. But having a backup is something that I now realize I have to start doing. Yeah. And how do you plan what needs to be done? Does it always work? How do you prioritize? How do you deal with deadlines? And then we look at these illustrations and answer questions. Then we're going to look at an actual video. So that's the lead-in, getting them talking about it, because time management is a major factor in every business. There is probably no job. Confused? Okay, I'm not sure. So first we talked about the lead-in, discussing what the students do, and the video then talks about time management more historically. So do you have any idea about time management on traditional factory assembly lines? Any idea of a name that this might have had? Shifts, yeah. Now you're going to see. It was something very special that began with the traditional factory assembly lines. And then in modern warehouses today, international projects and teams, what do you think is the issue there? Punch clock, yeah. And with the international teams, time zones, exactly. And people who work freelance. Not sure what chips is. Okay, zones, yeah. Communication. What about people who work freelance? What do we need to do? Yeah, plan in advance. Set an agenda for ourselves. Yeah, I have my to-do list. Yep, exactly. Okay, I'm going to switch to the video, and so they make these predictions, write them down, and then they have a look and see what the video says.
Time is money, goes the saying, and this is especially true in the business world. With production targets and project deadlines to meet, effective time management is a top concern for business leaders. Over 100 years ago, when car maker Henry Ford pioneered the industrial assembly line, he realized the connection between the time taken to make each car and company profits. Measuring and managing the time spent on tasks became part of a management approach known as Fordism. Today, the Fordist concept of time management still operates in some places. At many distribution warehouses, for example, workers are required to pick and pack orders at lightning speed. Elsewhere in the workplace, time management, in the sense of setting goals, prioritizing, and scheduling in order to maximize efficiency, is an important feature. At this publishing company, there's a weekly team meeting to discuss and schedule all the jobs that have to be done. Agata Wisniewska is the content development manager.
This week we'll probably need to deal with the second proofs first. My main role in the team is to organize a schedule, to allocate resources, and set the goals for the team members. Time management is very important for our business because if the team takes longer than expected, it has an impact on the budget, and therefore the company loses money. When it comes to managing the time of each of the members of my team, I do not get involved too much. I prefer them to decide how they prioritize their time and also to communicate to the rest of the team on the progress and any issues they may have.
One member of the
Sorry, are people not seeing the video? Just watching. Can anyone see it? Yes, okay. I'm going to go back to it.
Time is money, goes the saying, and this is especially true in the business world. With production targets and project deadlines to meet, effective time management is a top concern for business leaders. Over 100 years ago, when car maker Henry Ford pioneered the industrial assembly line, he realized the connection between the time taken to make each car and company profits. Measuring and managing the time spent on tasks became part of a management approach known as Fordism. Today, the Fordist concept of time management still operates in some places. At many distribution warehouses, for example, workers are required to pick and pack orders at lightning speed. Elsewhere in the workplace, time management in the sense of setting goals, prioritizing, and scheduling in order to maximize efficiency is an important feature. At this publishing company, there's a weekly team meeting to discuss and schedule all the jobs that have to be done. Agata Wisniewska is the content development manager.
This week we'll probably need to deal with the second proofs first. My main role in the team is to organize a schedule, to allocate resources, and set the goals for the team members. Time management is very important for our business because if the team takes longer than expected, it has an impact on the budget and therefore the company loses money. When it comes to managing the time of each of the members of my team, I do not get involved too much. I prefer them to decide how they prioritize their time and also to communicate to the rest of the team on the progress and any issues they may have.
One member of the team, Eleonora Pacina, is an instructional designer. How does she manage her time?
I work across many different projects, so what really helps me is making a to-do list at the beginning of the week, where I really jot down everything that I need to do for that week, but then I also identify key priorities, key tasks that I want to get done. I use a digital calendar, and I use different colors to identify what is meeting time and what is desk time. Another thing I use to manage my time is Post-it notes, and I use them just to remind myself of things that I wouldn't normally do so that they're there on my desktop looking at me.
Time management for employees of global companies brings new challenges. Matthew Dickin is the Director of Design and Production.
I work with teams and stakeholders spread all around the globe. So the first thing to say is I have to be very aware of where everybody is. And I have to be very aware of what that means in terms of time zone. So for calls with Australia, Asia, India, I aim for very early in my morning, which is afternoon or early evening for them. And then calls to America tend to happen at the end of my day, which is very early in the morning for them. Certainly there are times, particularly during busy periods, where it feels like there aren't enough hours in the day. So I have to be very careful to try and manage that within my own diary to make sure that that's not too often.
There's a growing demand from employees for more flexibility in their work schedules. And some people, like Eben Masdorp, a translator, are choosing to work on a freelance basis.
As a freelance, you actually have more time to work because you don't have to commute to work, for example. You also have more time to spend with your family because you can work in the evenings or early mornings, depending on what suits you best. I do have to stay focused, so my strategy tends to be to commit myself to 1 hour to see how much I can do in 1 hour. So don't take any breaks before the 60 minutes are up, and then sit down the next 60 minutes and see if I can hit the same target.
Organizing one's own time as a freelance is worlds away from the experience of workers on Henry Ford's assembly lines. But whatever the role and whatever the industry, good time management will continue to be essential to business profitability and an individual's career success.
Okay, so some of you got to see the beginning twice. Okay, so did anyone know about Fordism? Had you heard of this? This is this measuring exactly how long each thing on the assembly line takes. And this is part of traditional work that industrial engineers learn and have to manage. And not just time, but resources, yes. And knowing who exactly does what. Today, cars are, more than one type of car is built on a particular assembly line. So it's extremely important to have it all organized. What is being done? What do they need? And this is also part of the just-in-time warehousing, so that they don't have all of the components that they need sitting there taking up space, which costs money, until they need them. So all exactly. Just in time, just in place, right? And the modern warehouses, a friend of mine said she started her job as a picker, where you pick the right things, but you have to be very fast. And you mentioned the international projects, the idea of the time zones, absolutely. When I worked in New York, our head office was Chicago, which for us was actually quite nice because we didn't have to worry about being in the office right on time. The other end side of it, of course, was that we stayed later. So we more or less moved our time slot because they were an hour behind us. So this can happen. If your head office is at a different time zone, you might find that you're working at a different time. And freelancers, we know we have to stay on task, we have to keep working, we have to make sure we get things done, and we learn to schedule ourselves and stay focused. So the last thing I wanted to show you here was to look at these two boxes. This is something that we have throughout because this is designed for both people who are at university and those who are working. So those at university can look at this first box. I'm still studying and I haven't started work yet. And then deciding on these statements, are they true or false? And those who are at work, this is about working at home because the final task of the unit is whether or not you can work at home. So I have experience of this and what you need to do. And companies are doing this. In many cases, sometimes it's to save money on office space. Sometimes it's because of the work-life balance. Sometimes it's because they're giving people a chance to be with families. Women who are coming back from maternity leave might work part-time, or men taking what they call here the Papa month or longer, have time to be at home, but sometimes work from home. So the workplace is changing, and we try to include both those studying and those who are at work. Okay, so having a look at the components here, we have different components that come along with the course. The book comes with either the digital resources, which are all the audio and video that are online, or the one with my English lab, which includes, in addition to the digital resources, an online platform, an LMS, with practice for the students. There's, of course, a paper printed workbook, teacher's resource book, which is very comprehensive, filled with all kinds of extra reading materials, so a reading bank, photocopyables, the answer keys, and extremely important, background information for the teacher. We don't expect every teacher teaching business English to be an expert in every area of business. Business people are not experts in every area of business. So to help the teachers with some background information is vital. And then Active Teach, which is front of class software. Okay. And this is what we covered today, what these skills are, why our students need them, what about us, the issues and how to build them, and then those were the skills that we looked at, which I chose because I felt these were kind of the first ones we would start with. We need to know about meetings, negotiations, sales and sellings, presentation, and time management. And this is what the series looks like. At the moment, these are all available or coming very soon, and A1 and A2 are coming in 2020. So it is a multi-level course. And now we can come to the questions.